right, so now we're on to planting. These have been sitting for a couple hours. I can actually feel moisture coming up through the soil. I have labeled where I want, what I want in each row. So this says pepper on one side and Thai on the other. It is important to label your seeds, even better if you can find a way to label them that will not wear off as the season goes on. So these are Thai peppers. Peppers, I only want one plant per cell eventually. So if they're really expensive seeds, I might just plant one seed per well because I don't want to waste any. Otherwise, I would typically plant two because I want to have a good chance that at least one of them comes up in each well. So I'm just going to put them on the soil surface. I'm going to give them a little push down with my fingertip. Oop, that one stuck to my fingertip. And then I'm going to cover them. And as a general rule of thumb, you want seeds to be planted about the same depth as their size. So I want to cover them with about as much soil as their thickness, if that makes sense. Only plant 2 seeds per well if you are willing and able to kill and discard the ones that you don't want. If you are someone who likes to leave everything alive, you'll only want to plant 1 per well so that you don't end up with overcrowded seeds. So putting them down, I'm just pushing them in place with my fingertip, making sure that it doesn't stick to my fingertip, that's actually on the soil. And then I'm just lightly covering and then smushing them down. Once again, you really want those seeds in contact with the soil, and I can feel the water coming up and getting my fingers nice and muddy there. So those should come up just fine. Seeds are fine for a few years, so I'm just being careful that I am not getting any dirt or moisture back into the seed packet, and I'm just putting any that I don't use right back in there, sealing them up, and those will be fine for next year. So pepper seeds or tomato seeds, anything that's about that size, plant just like that. Things that are super tiny. So these are petunia seeds. Are even smaller than a grain of sand. These are almost invisible. I want to make sure my fingers are dry, so I'm just drying them off on some newspaper here. Otherwise, they're just going to stick to my fingertips. So these petunias, I really only want 1 or 2 plants per cell, but I can't pick up 1 or 2 of these seeds. They're too tiny. So I'm just going to take the tiniest pinch I can take. I'm just going to sprinkle them lightly on the soil surface. And they're going to just disappear into those nooks and crannies. So a little tiny pinch, it's like a pinch of salt. And I'm trying not to put too many in there because I'm going to have to pull out any extras. I'm just putting in, I'm guessing there might be 6 or 8 going into each one, but of course I can't really see them well enough to count them. I'm not going to cover these at all. These are super tiny, they need light to germinate, and I'm just going to shove them down in there. So these are petunias. Other things that are that tiny, flowering tobacco, or which I can never figure out how to pronounce, it's Nicotiana, I think. But seeds that are invisibly small, don't cover them at all, scatter them on the surface, and just tamp them down. Then you've got the things that are a little bit in between. So basil kind of falls in that category. This is some sweet Thai basil. You may notice a theme here. I'm going to scatter that. So basil, I want no more than 2, maybe 3 per cell. So I typically aim to have maybe 5 seeds going in. And these, once again, I'm going to scatter on the soil surface. So I'm just sort of scattering them around. I think this next row is the same thing. Yep, so I can put some extras over there. And then I stir them. So I want them very slightly under the soil surface, but I don't want them deeply covered. So I'm just going to stir the soil around. I planted more seeds in here than I actually need to germinate. So if it's not perfect, it's fine. As long as I get 1 to 3 coming up per well, I'm happy. And so I'm just stirring them around and then once again tamping them down firmly. And then last step is to make sure these are happy. So if you write back, where did it go? Here it is. Almost all seeds will germinate better if they are warm. So I'm going to go move this to where my seeds live, up in my husband's office. I'm going to put a heat mat under it, plug that in, and they're going to stay on the heat mat until they come up. As soon as they're germinated, they no longer need the heat, and the heat will cause problems. Seeds tend to most seeds that you're going to grow for your vegetable garden are going to grow best, are going to germinate best with heat, but they're going to grow best at cooler temperatures, 65 kind of temperatures. Absolutely critical that these stay moist, but not so wet that they are rotting. So I'm going to check how much water is in here right now. Remember, we filled this all the way up at the beginning, and now there is, I don't know, 1/4 inch of water left in there. I don't really want them sitting soggy, so I'm going to just pour off excess water. It doesn't have to be perfectly dry. In fact, I don't want it perfectly dry. I just don't want them sitting in soup. So since these are already wet all the way to the top, they don't really need more water right now. And then every day or two, I'm going to pull this up, see if there's moisture there. Basically, I want to add water so that the next day, or by the second day at the latest, it's back to being perfectly dry at the bottom, but that the seeds have not dried out on top. So we're letting water wick up through there. So keep them moist. Some people do cover with plastic wrap. I find that's a recipe for mold and mildew and nasty stuff, and if you don't remember to take it off quickly enough, you will smother your plants. So that's not the route that I go. I just monitor them regularly, keep adding water to the bottom. I don't ever water from the top because you can wash your seeds away and make them most unhappy. Anyway, happy germinating. Expect that there's going to be lots of failures and lots of successes, and it's just a fun experiment. So keeps you happy with something to do in the winter. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.